What makes the perfect signature scent? And why are fruity fragrances, especially these 5, great considerations? Let's talk about it. Hello everyone, my name is Surya and I am a California-based perfumer and fragrance enthusiast. On this channel, we talk about both the art and science of fragrance creation and collection. Today, we're going to talk about my top 5 signature scent-worthy fruity fragrances. First, we're going to cover all the criteria that make the perfect signature scent. We're then going to talk about why fruity fragrances are so good at meeting these criteria. Finally, I'm going to give you my top 5 fruity fragrances that are signature scent worthy. If that sounds exciting, hit the subscribe button and let's get started. So what makes the perfect signature scent? In my opinion, there are 4 things I like to look for when I'm picking a signature fragrance for someone. The first is versatility. Can I wear it in every weather and every occasion? Perfect signature scents need to have what I call adaptability. As you wear the fragrance in different weather conditions, it adapts to the temperature around it. In warm weather, it might be a little bit more bright and uplifting, and in cold weather, a little bit more dark and sweet and syrupy. The same concept of adaptability also applies to occasion. Maybe with a casual outfit, it smells a little bit more fun and playful, but with a more formal occasion, it smells a bit more put together. So how does one fragrance do all of this? That brings me to point number 2, balance. Balance is the contrast between weak and strong. It's the contrast between light and dark. It's the contrast between top and base. For example, a fragrance that's more top heavy and more light will be a great summer fragrance. It'll be more sharp and bright and uplifting. A fragrance that's more base heavy or more dark would be a great winter fragrance. It'll be more sweet and syrupy or woody and spicy. A balanced fragrance will tend to have a good mix of both. In hot weather, it will evaporate off the skin and create a more bright feeling without feeling too syrupy or sickly. But the same fragrance in cold weather would feel a little bit more dark and woody and mysterious. This is one of the main reasons why fruits work so well as signature scents, which we'll talk about in the next section. The third criteria for a good signature scent is uniqueness. Now, what makes a fragrance unique? In my opinion, it comes down to one word: recognition. When you wear your signature fragrance should leave a trail behind you and a scent bubble ahead of you. Before you even step foot into a room, just by your smell, someone should know, hey, Surya's coming. Something to note is just because a fragrance is well known within the fragrance community doesn't mean it's not a unique fragrance. 99% of people are not even in the fragrance community, and they probably wouldn't have ever encountered anyone else who would wear that fragrance. So this criteria of uniqueness is completely subjective and it's up to you to decide. So that brings me to the 4th and final criteria. Your signature scent should put a smile on your face. Every time you shower right before you head out the door, you should be excited to put on your signature fragrance. Scent is designed to trigger memory and emotion. So if your fragrance really isn't doing that in the morning, maybe it's time to pick a different signature scent. Every time I wear a fragrance, I intentionally try to look for something that I can't really put into words. This feeling of awe or wonder, something that makes me feel like this fragrance is changing my life. That feeling that I can't describe is what I look for as the 4th criteria. Okay, so we now know what to look for when we're choosing a good signature scent. But why do fruity fragrances fit all these criteria so perfectly? Well, there are a few reasons for this. The first being fruit ingredients are not a single distillation. Most of the time, they are accords. Accords are basically harmonious blends of different ingredients that create one smell. For example, to create the smell of a strawberry, you can't just take the fruit and distill it into an ingredient that you can use in fragrance. You need to look at a bunch of different molecules and other ingredients that you can blend together to create the illusion of a strawberry. Now, when you think of accords, there are usually 2 different types of accords: vertical accords and horizontal accords. Horizontal accords are usually made with ingredients of similar volatility. This means if you look at the fragrance pyramid, all the ingredients will fall under either top, mid, or base. So the final accord will either be a top note, a middle note, or a base note. On the other hand, vertical accords are made with ingredients of varying volatility. This means this accord can be smelled at varying levels as the fragrance progresses from top to mid to base. Most fruity fragrances are vertical accords. Although they are centered around the middle note, they have notes that bleed into the top and into the base. This creates a perfect note for versatility and for balance. When a vertical fruity accord is being designed, the perfumer thinks about how it evolves from top to base. Certain aspects of the fruit, for example the tartness or the greenness or the brightness, are all placed in the top. Other aspects of the fruit, such as a dark, syrupy sweetness, are placed in the base. The core characteristic smell of the fruit is usually the heart, and it's placed in the mid. This balance of top, middle, and base creates a very versatile fragrance that adapts to the temperature around it. For example, in hot weather, the top notes are more apparent. You might get a little bit more of a bright, light, uplifting feeling. The same fragrance in cold weather will have more apparent dark undertones. You might get a little bit of a syrupy sweetness. The same goes for occasion. Fruits can be seen as playful and fun in a casual setting, but also sophisticated and put together in a more formal setting. Of course, the last thing to note is not a lot of mainstream fragrances are centered around fruits. So this makes for a very unique signature scent. Now that we know how fruity accords are constructed and why they make such good signature scent fragrances, let's get into my top 5 picks. But before that, I have one more thing to say. I'm really happy to announce that I finally crossed 1,000 subscribers. My last 2 videos did so well, and I was so excited to read all the positive comments. Some of you even booked the free one-on-one call with me, and it was so amazing to meet people in the community. I'm thankful for all the support, and I really hope you continue to join me on my journey of perfumery. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm already subscribed to 2 curly-haired fragrance reviewers. Do I really need another one? I'm just kidding. But my goal with this channel is a little bit different. I want to focus on bridging the gap between perfumer and perfume enthusiast. I want to talk about the underlying art and science of fragrance and why I'm so passionate about it. And the most meaningful thing to me is you guys, the fragrance community. I want to connect with you and follow your journey just as much as I want to share my own. That's why I ask that you stay connected by subscribing, by following and DMing me on Instagram, and by booking a free one-on-one call with me so I can get to know you better. Thank you so much for being someone that makes this community a safe and exciting place. Now back to the video. So here's my first pick for top 5 signature scent-worthy fruity fragrances. Melon Masu by Cult of Cowrie. So this is a fragrance I got to try at Scent Explore 2023. The perfumer Chris was already a follower of my Instagram account, and I met him in person while I was at this event. His passion for fragrance was immediately obvious, and I spent more time at his table than any other at the event. He told me all about his time in Japan and how it inspired him to start his line of fragrances. Cult of Cowrie, which is his brand, by far makes the most unique fragrances that I've smelled in the last 2 years. While I was at his table, I told him I was on a no-buy, but Chris, being the great guy he was and seeing how excited I was about his brand, gave me the 2 testers he used at Scent Explore. He said, hey, have these bottles, no strings attached, you don't even have to do a review on them. But I've personally worn this fragrance a lot over the last year, and I wanted to share my love for such an underrated brand. So this is Melon Masu. It is based on sake, which is a Japanese alcoholic beverage. From what I've heard, it's made from fermented rice and water, and it's brewed in a similar process to beer, where the starches in the rice turn into sugar and then are converted into alcohol. I'm gonna spray this to spark the notes again. Okay, this is the most unique fragrance that's on my table right now. It has a very sweet and aldehydic opening. Aldehydes are this very sparkly note that give an effervescent feeling. Now, the top notes have cucumber, pear, and sake. And the cucumber is the most apparent because it gives this fresh feeling. There's also a little bit of mintiness that comes in. As the fragrance transitions to the mid, there is this very interesting fermented rice accord. It adds a very starchy texture to the fragrance. Of course, the star of the show is that melon note. Watery, crisp, fresh. There's no better way to describe it. This is one that just has to be smelled. Along with the fermented rice, we also have white and red florals like jasmine and rose. Finally, the dry down is very interesting. It has this warm ambery note, along with something called hinoki wood. Now, hinoki wood is a very unique smoky wood that I haven't seen in any other fragrance. Now, from the Cult of Cowrie website, this fragrance is described as inspired by rituals of drinking cold, crisp sake to escape the heat of the summertime, melon masu encapsulates the image of a sake glass filled to the brim and overflowing into a square wooden masu cup. This fragrance is perfectly balanced. Like I said before, the crisp, uplifting opening is great for more playful summer days, while the smoky and dark dry down is great for more professional environments as well as the winter weather. This fragrance costs $220 for 50 ml, and I personally think that it is a great choice. Now let's move on to fragrance number 2. My second pick is from Memoirs of a Perfume Collector, and it's called Tales from Zanzibar. Now the central note to this fragrance is guava. Guava is an exotic tart fruit that I grew up eating in India. Now online people usually describe it as a blend between strawberry and pear, but I honestly think it has its own very unique signature. It has a beautiful tartness that's balanced with an almost candy-like sweetness. Now I think this fragrance captures guava almost photorealistically. I'm gonna spray it on to remind me of the top. Okay, this one really does put a smile on my face. It opens immediately exotic, almost like nothing you've ever smelled before. It has some citrusy and green facets that are balanced with lime and mint. Of course, the guava accord is at the heart of this fragrance, and it's almost undeniably realistic. There's a very subtle sweetness that's there at the top, and also a very creamy texture that comes from the coconut note. At the base, you have a lot of clean musks. These musks act as fixatives, and that's what makes this the most long-lasting fresh fragrance in my collection. I've had it linger on clothes for up to 3 days, and it still somehow smells fresh. When I wear this fragrance, the most obvious image is the tropical paradise. The citrus and guava make it very playful and summer-worthy, but that coconut and clean musk can definitely be dressed up in a more formal setting. There's also a really slight hint of dark woodiness, but this only gets apparent and pulled out in colder weather. The price of this fragrance is about $215 for 50 ml, and I definitely think it's worth the price. Now let's move on to fragrance number 3. Now, you've all probably heard of this one because it's been very hyped in the fragrance community, but that won't stop me from putting it on this list. This is definitely one of the top 2 mango fragrances in my collection, and that is God of Fire from Stefan Hubert Lucas. Now, what can I say about God of Fire that you probably haven't heard already? Let me give it a spray first. Now, my bottle is almost empty, which is why I didn't spray too much. Now this is an amazing mango fragrance. It takes me straight back to growing up in India. Every year around the summertime, my parents would bring a huge load of mangoes from the village. This fragrance is the epitome of a very juicy, fresh mango. It has a little bit of a bright spiciness that comes from ginger. It also has a little bit of a supporting tart greenness that emulates the peel of a mango. But what makes this fragrance unique, along with the perfect mango accord, is what's called cypriol. Cypriol, or nagarmota, is this very dark, almost incensey fragrance ingredient. This makes the mango smell almost mystical, like exotic. Now, I've only seen a few fragrance houses use cypriol because it's such a concentrated, dark ingredient that it's very hard to work with. But this fragrance does it so well that it blends into the background of the mango. The way this fragrance hides that dark quality of the cypriol is using something called harmonizers. Harmonizers basically blend the gaps between different ingredients and create a very smooth transition. In this case, jasmine and other indolic floral notes were used to harmonize the cypriol with the rest of the blend. Now, indolic florals are best described to have this mothball kind of smell. This blends very well with the natural smell of cypriol and creates kind of a bridge between the mid of the fragrance and the base. Another great harmonizer that's used here is amber. The warm ambers in the base create a perfect bridge to the mango accord in the mid. Finally, there are a lot of smooth musks that just round everything off perfectly. You can tell that this fragrance was created by a master perfumer just by how smooth and well blended everything is. Of course, the sweet, juicy mango is great for the summer, but in winter, there is this dark undertone that then takes the center stage. The dark smokiness coming from the cypriol and the warmth coming from the amber is what makes this a great professional fragrance as well, while the mango makes it a great playful fragrance. This fragrance costs $200 for 50 ml, and judging from the fact that mine's almost empty, I can tell you that this one's worth it. Now let's go on to fragrance number 4. This one's basically the opposite of God of Fire. Now this one you've probably never heard of, but I got to try it at Glamcation 2023. It's an Indian brand called Sandy's Fragrances, and the fragrance is Nagpur Santra. Now, I believe Nagpur is a variety of orange that's native to India. This is by far the most unique orange fragrance that I've ever smelled. Okay, at this point, I know I've been saying that for every other fragrance, but that just shows you how unique all these fragrances are. Let's give it a test spray. Now, as expected, this opens a very juicy orange, but surprisingly, it is not sweet at all. In fact, it is very dark and spicy and complex. It smells almost herbal at the top, like tulsi, for example. There's also white florals in here, like ylang-ylang, which make this fragrance almost ethereal. This combination of what I interpret as tulsi and ylang-ylang create almost a holy appearance. There's sandalwood in here, which creates a very rich, creamy base, along with patchouli, which just complements that dark overtone. Finally, we have musk and vetiver, which just makes a clean base for everything else to lie on top of. Now, like I said before, this fragrance has a holy characteristic. If you've ever been to a temple in India, you can smell that smoke that we use for our rituals. It creates this air of calmness. Whenever I smell this fragrance, it definitely makes me feel like I'm connected to something higher. This one obviously takes a little bit more character to pull off, but if you've got it, you can wear this fragrance in any weather and any occasion. Now, the orange is obviously great in hot weather, in the summer, and in more playful environments. But the spices, the vetiver, the sandalwood, and the patchouli all work great in more professional environments or in a little bit of a colder weather. Now, if you're based in India, this one's easy to buy, but in the US, it's a little bit harder to come by. You can order it for just $85 for 60 ml of this fragrance. If you can't find it in the US, I can recommend an alternative. This fragrance is called Soul Cafe by Savoir Faire, and I've made a review of it on my channel. It has similarities in terms of being a very complex orange fragrance, but it also stands in its own right. If you're looking for a complex orange and you can't find Nagpur Santra, try out Soul Cafe. Now that brings me to fragrance number 5. This is arguably the most popular fragrance on this list, but I just could not leave it off because of how often I reach for this one. This is Gris Charnel by BDK Parfum. If you haven't smelled Gris Charnel yet, it's probably available in one of the neighboring fragrance stores around you. Now, the center of this fragrance is a rich fig. It has sweet and sticky facets like honey and dates. Gris Charnel is basically sophistication in a bottle. You can dress it up all the way to a 3-piece suit, but the fun thing is you can also dress it down without feeling out of place. Now this one I'm gonna spray on my hand just because of how much I love it. Now it opens very green and spicy. It uses one of my favorite fragrance ingredients of all time, cardamom. Cardamom is a very warm, exotic spice that I often use in my fragrances. Here it creates a very calming effect, along with the ever-famous black tea and fig combination. Now the fig itself has some powdery qualities, which are supported by iris. The creaminess of the fig is also supported by sandalwood. Now this fragrance dries down into a very spicy, woody base. You can tell that this fragrance was designed by a master perfumer because of the use of all these harmonizers, like I mentioned before. The aspects of the fig are mirrored in other ingredients throughout the fragrance. You have the fresh greenness in the tea. You have the warmth in the cardamom. You have the creaminess in the sandalwood, and you have the powderiness from the iris. All of these ingredients so beautifully support that central fig heart that you just can't hate this one. Now, I personally prefer Gris Charnel over the Extrait version. This is because, in my opinion, it is more versatile and better balanced. So it is great for a signature scent. The Extrait starts leaning a bit more dark, which is great for some people, but for me, I love that light tea fig fragrance. Like all the other fragrances in this list, this fragrance is perfectly balanced. We have the light and playful fig and tea combination, which can be worn in more casual settings. We also have the dark and syrupy honey and date facets. When balanced by the sophisticated sandalwood, this fragrance becomes my go-to office fragrance. I honestly wore this almost every day when I was working in an office, and it really made me feel like a professional. For $170 for 100 ml, you really can't go wrong with Gris Charnel. So there you have it. That has been my top 5 signature scent-worthy fruity fragrances. Thank you so much for being a part of my fragrance journey, and I will see you in the next video.